It's the state of the dungeon! It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Rob and welcome to my State of the Dungeon address. Today we are going to be doing the State of the Dungeon address for the game that took place on the 8th of April. The game was Mighty Protectors. All players were in attendance, although the player of Bulwark was playing remotely due to a COVID scare. So, we were basically back into GiftedCon. The characters had done pretty much as much as they figured they could, with the exception of one sidebar. There was Muscles came back because his player was missing the previous session and was sleeping, so he wasn't able to play remotely. But when he got back, he basically just got with the rest of the group. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Did a little research about his competition in Mr. Muscles. On the other side, Bulwark and Cyghost were going to go and try to find out more about the woman who had attempted to sedate Sentinel. However, they found out that they were too late. The woman had been abducted from the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Since she was comatose, they were taking her to the hospital. She was unresponsive. And midway, she vanished. So, they basically found out that, yeah, the hospital driver, the ambulance drivers couldn't explain it. And a person missing from your care is a pretty big deal in a hospital. So, they got away. Although, you know, they did act a little suspicious to the clerk, who was not having any of their stuff. But that was pretty much it. The rest of the night, Veronica just basically said, just go to bed and get some rest. So they did. Sentinel and Bulwark decided they would get up early. Sentinel had slept pretty well with the sedation, but he woke up feeling like $1 million. So he decided he was going to check out what media and the news were saying. And he found out that this GiftedCon was quite the hot-button topic. In Germany, it looked like the government had completely ruthlessly suppressed criticism on GiftedCon, even though there were some people who were protesting, having super-powered people in Munich, all congregating together as if this was a big ticking time bomb. And that could be argued, certainly. But around the world, there were other people who were like, this might be our chance to look and see exactly how bad this situation could be. So they were kind of observing, except for a few that were outright just saying this is a terrible idea. Especially Al Jazeera, going on with the idea that Germany looked like they were trying to scoop up every superpowered person they could get a hold of, possibly trying to start a new nationality of super beings. That doesn't read well in history. Bulwark himself also decided he was going to hit the research and try to find out more information about this little black box that he found in the camera. But outside of the information they already had, he really didn't learn a great deal. He just learned a little bit more of the time window that he'd have to deal with the burst transmissions that the camera was pulsing through. He learned a little bit more about how it would be able to change the video feed as it would be related back to the security, in other words, techno. And, yeah, it was really, advanced tech stuff, nothing earth-shattering, nothing that would be considered advanced tech beyond modern technology, but high-end stuff. So, it gave him something to think about. At 9 o'clock, everybody kind of got up. Those two had been busy for some time, and the rest of the group just kind of rejoined them. Now, total of things that they wanted to get done on day 2. First of all, of course, Muscles has his bout with Mr. Muscles for the name, who gets to be called Muscles. And Muscles is a heavyweight. He outclasses Mr. Muscles, but who knows? Muscles knew that Mr. Muscle has a sonic boom effect that he can make, a sonic shout, and it seems like his whole body is elevated in strength, not just his his motor muscles. He has super breath, he's got enhanced volume, he's got the ability to make sonic booms, all these things that Muscles is just inside of his own body he's physically strong. He doesn't have enhanced lungs or things like that. So those are all extra powers that he could get if he wanted to develop them. So he was getting nervous, clearly. He really did not want to lose his name. But as kind of a, what's going on? Oh, the other thing they want to do is they want to show up to the seminar that Mr. Universe is throwing for Gifted Only about nemesis and what that could mean to people in general. So, a message was delivered to Rook, inviting him to a personal meeting about some very potentially lucrative opportunities for him. None of the rest of the group got such invitation. This was just for Rook, so suspicious. Rook's tried to be as anonymous as possible, and succeeding fairly well. However, this was for a private meeting in a kind of a boardroom type setting in the convention center itself, apart from the regular convention. Interesting. And the message was assigned by King. All right. Well, the group immediately, this is a trap. It's got to be a trap. There's no other way around it. So they started doing their usual shtick about how could this be a trap, and mentally trying to go through all the possibilities, and eventually it just boiled down to they're all just going to go to the convention. Oh, and Extra Crispy showed up too, so Extra Crispy is around. He has replaced Doorman since Doorman is missing, but now they have Extra Crispy, who himself is proven to be fairly competent. He was certainly very useful in the meeting with Ahmed in Iraq. So, the group goes to the convention center. They get Extra Crispy in, because he hadn't been there the first day, so he had to register and everything. And he got VIP tags, of course, because, well, he's gifted. There was a short face-off with Extra Crispy and Pyroclast. Pyroclast is the more well-known superhero with fire powers, and Extra Crispy himself has pretty impressive fire powers. They're kind of a yin-yang situation. Pyroclast has excellent control. He can do a lot of tricks with his powers. Extra Crispy is far more powerful in terms of raw damage and flame, but he has no range. His range is very limited, although he's learned to kind of shape his aura that he can create out to about 6 feet away from him, which is as far as his range goes at the moment. But he can make things very, very hot, and he can hit something for an awful lot of damage. His finishing maneuver is his flaming punch, so flaming uppercut. He Hadokens people. That meeting really didn't amount to much because, well, when they showed up at GiftedCon, I had everybody make a cool check, and Hank, who was still hanging around with the group, rolled a 1, and so did Bulwark this time. So Bulwark's a rock star, and Hank is a rock star, because lots of people have been paying a lot of attention to the guy who looks like a slick devil. And his story is actually kind of, people are like, hey, it's actually not a bad guy, despite the fact that he looks the way he does. So it's ironic, maybe, but so they are coolest people. Everyone else did okay to not so good, so it was pretty clearly a smaller field. And as the group was going through and they met Pyroclast, there was a brief argument between Extra Crispy and Pyroclast. Pyroclast got the better of him literally, verbally. But Extra Crispy said, hey, I'm with them. And they just strutted off, and there really wasn't much that he could do. So, Pyroclast is pretty cool, and a lot of people really think he's awesome. But, yeah, Extra Crispy is just a bit cooler because he travels with the group. So they get to the hall, they go across the pavilion, they get to the convention center, they go to the hall in front of all of these boardrooms and banquet halls. Now, some are being used for lectures and presentations. Some are not. This one that they're looking at is not. It's not part of the convention at all. Somebody is... They determined that a king did actually reserve the room and put down a $7,000 deposit on it. So, You know, it's not an insubstantial amount of money to try to get the attention of Rook. So, Muscles decides, screw it, I'm going in. So he goes into the room. It's not locked. The room is clean, there's nobody in it, and there is a fruit plate spread. He noms on some of the fruit, and everyone's expecting him to drop. He doesn't. He just kind of loafs around, and then he finally realizes it's almost time for this meeting, and I don't want to be the only person in the room because nobody else followed him. They were trying to observe who was going in and get some idea of what's going on. So he leaves. Time for the meeting shows up. Nobody goes into the hall, nobody goes into the room. So they decide they're going to go in. First of all, Bulwark and company, Bulwark, Cyghost, Muscles, and Sentinel, decide that if they all go in, things might not go well. So Rook agrees to go in because, well, Rook is pretty solid. I mean, he's got his deflection abilities, he's got his durability is really good, his communication, he can talk back to the group whenever he needs to, and, you know, he's all told, not all too bad, and he wanted to take his personal lawyer, so Hank agreed to go with him. So he and Hank go in, and instead of an empty room, there's 5 people in the room now. So there is a wall that springs forth into the doorframe the moment they go through it. So the rest of the group can't see what's beyond, and it is a force field. So it's an opaque force field that they can't get through. Which Muscles punches and just can't get through it. Sentinel runs around to the next convention hall to see what's going on, see if he can get into the room from the other side. While this is all happening, the group is planning on doing things. Bulwark attempts to go intangible, and the force field blocks him because force fields block intangible people. Even insubstantial, he just could not get through it. The people inside the room, he realizes he kind of recognizes some of them. And he makes his rolls, and he finds out that the person sitting at the table who addresses him right away is famous author Stephen King. King, yes. And he invites Rook to join his group, the Chess Club, because his name is King, and it makes sense, and I think it's hilarious. And they have a selection of other people. Now, I'm not going to give away the identity of the person they couldn't identify, because just dice weren't with them. But one of the people, the knight of the group, is Prince Harry. Because it is. Because I think he'd be awesome if he had superpowers and he could suddenly get some gothic plate armor and a sword like Excalibur, and that was my thought. I thought that'd be great combination. So he can summon powered armor and a cool sword for his superpowers. Stephen King can transform people's nightmares into reality. So on the nose. And there's a variety of other people. The queen of the group is RuPaul. Yeah, I was feeling a little silly. The group was all going, well, who's the queen? And they're like, it isn't Queen Elizabeth. I'm like, God, no. And they were going through, and one of them actually guessed where I was going, and they guessed, RuPaul. I'm like, shoot, guessed. Okay, well, it's RuPaul, with her powers of spreading glitter and blinding people, among other things, but also enhanced cool, which is kind of nice. The bishop is an actual religious person, and it's as far as they could get, but he has some interesting powers of creating barriers and blocking out things, and excommunicate things. And then there was one other who was unidentified. They just did not recognize this guy. He's a fairly good-looking guy, but no idea. Well, as King was making his sales pitch, and Rook was just not that interested, because it was clear he was not going to leave the group. No matter how outlandish this other group was. They explained they wanted him because he clearly had the best claim to the title of Rook, which fit the chess club. So they wanted him because he picked that as his name. Or they were going to pay him to rescind the title to their fifth member who wanted the title of Rook, but he you know, he couldn't take it while there's an actual Rook that everybody knows. They know about copyrights and things like that. Well, as he's making the sales pitch, all of a sudden the wall explodes. And this is not the wall from the ballroom that Sentinel's on. It's on the other side. And 3 old men are standing there. One of them has wings, like black feathered wings, and his hands are claws, and he's stooped over, and his nose is his predatory beak. He is Vulture Man. There's an older man with a walker, and then there's another, again, older man, a bit stooped, but he has black flame dripping down from his hands. As an inside joke, the player of Rook just had a significant birthday milestone, and of course, Vulture Man, Kronos, the agent of time, and the geriatric Avenger, were, as a group, the old-timers who had a grudge against the chess club. I just really wanted old people to show up as a kind of a dig, because I'm petty that way. So the battles commenced. Rook was caught in the blast of Stephen King's blast, so he had to deal with a demonic clown, which suddenly manifested. But the group all eventually broke in. Extra Crispy flame punched the barrier and broke the force field, because he could do crazy damage with his energy attack. And as soon as the group could get into the room, they started using their save or be incapacitated attacks between the paralyzing spit of Muscles or the paralysis ray of Ghost. There's not a lot of people who can. You have to make that first roll, otherwise you're pretty much screwed. Now, the old-timers were actually a legitimate, serious group that I thought would provide a bit more challenge. My dice were terrible. Terrible. But the thing was, I was going to try to use these characters as a way of showing them the advantages of the advantage, or of the power, experience levels, which gives them bonuses to hit and to make their resistance and defense and everything. It was supposed to be very clear that they're pretty tough. Nope, when they hit by a mile, so their greater defense didn't matter so much. I couldn't roll all that great, but I did get to do a few things with those guys. As I said, these old folks got felled pretty quickly, unfortunately. Even the chess club didn't get a chance to do a great deal. RuPaul tried blinding them. They all made their saving throws. Prince Harry had to spend a round to clad up, get his gear on. The one who would be Rook was actually could build a phantasmal castle with defenses. That's inspired by a cartoon that I particularly enjoy, and one of the more fun characters in that. For those who haven't seen it, Epithet Erased. Highly recommend it. Very good. But you'll see who I'm talking about if you watch it. After about 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th episodes. Highly recommend it. But, as I said, for the most part, the old folks got rolled. The heroes are pretty good. The ninja showed up. The ninja had some wordplay earlier, demonstrating that he has quite a bit more confidence now, and he has enjoyed the company of ladies using his celebrity status. The group was shocked, but now he's got swagger, and he appeared and immediately shin-kicked Stephen King. He thought that the chess club were the bad guys because he doesn't like Stephen King. Stephen weathered the vicious attack, and the bishop ended up banishing. No, Stephen wrote the ninja out of the battle, because that's another ability he's got. He's actually a beta level gifted, so he banished him temporarily. But the ninja did make his appearance. The biggest thing, the combination that I was going to do, unfortunately Vulture Man dropped really quickly, because he actually was quite a terror in close combat. I thought he might have been pretty funny with as badly as Muscles was rolling in combat, and he was putrid. His rolls were so bad. Which is probably good, because he would have killed these old folks. because they're old. They literally are old. Two of them had the disadvantage of reduced fortitude because they're old. But the great attack, Kronos, has the ability to alter time flow on others. So he used it on the Geriatric Avenger to allow him to fire his devitalization ray a couple of times, which he tried to do on Cyghost, who had paralyzed him. He tried to break free with one of his actions, and then he fired two of his blasts at her, catching her and wiping out a good chunk of her power. Devitalization ray directly attacks your power, and it actually can do quite a bit. Even relatively low levels of power with devitalization ray can do quite a bit. So they had their powers stripped a little bit, but again, the fight was just over too quickly. Granted, it was towards the end of the night. So, for what it was worth, it was a fun little fight. And, a little celebration for the player. Then, unfortunately, the players for Rook and Muscles had to leave because they travel, which was unfortunate because I was just about to unveil a birthday present for Rook, because I do give birthday presents out. And as it turned out, Bulwark, who was taking a little nap at the time, and Cyghost and Sentinel all had birthdays since the start of the campaign, and I never really gave out those presents because it wasn't entirely certain how long this campaign was going to run. So each of them got power suits of armor. First of all, Cyghost has been knocked silly a couple of times and fairly badly injured, and she's never really gone and tried to improve her defense or tried to get any kind of extra armor, which is unfortunate because she's taken a beating, broken bones, and just ugh. So this armor should give her a bit more resistance, and also each of them is custom made based around their powers, so they can still use their powers. Bulwark's armor will phase with him when he goes intangible. It also gives him a bit of a power bonus because he can run low on power, so he's got an internal battery that he can access. Sentinel's ability allows him to still use his repulsor blasts out of the hands, but it also gives him a buffer for his force shield, and it gives all of them some small bonuses that amplify their power and allow them to do more with what they can do. So, all in all, it was a pretty good night. Not perhaps the most eventful. Again, as far as superhero battles go, the battle was kind of flat. The one thing that did happen, though, at the end of the night, just before Muscles left, he did have his match against Mr. Muscle. And it was over after the first round because he used paralyzing spit, and I rolled a natural 20. He drops rigid. Muscles does something. He smacked him around a bit. Pretty sad, really. Eventually, Mr. Muscles did make a roll to resist, and he started setting up Muscles by using Sonic Slams and knocking him away, because his Sonic Slams are concussive more so than actual, real serious energy damage. And he would knock him into the ropes and set him up for another maneuver. And Mr. Muscles, actually delivered a drop kick to Muscles and so on. It got a little confusing with the names, but it looked kind of bad for Muscles at first, except you have to remember, superheroes can make a roll against their agility to roll with attacks, so they take half of any damage they take and take it off of their power instead of their health, so that they aren't really badly hurt. They roll with the worst of it. And while Mr. Muscles is quite strong in comparison to most, he's not really in Muscles' league. So eventually it's only a matter of time before Muscles really got a hold of him. Now, Paradigm was there, and he put the paradigm of the battle in pro wrestling standards, so nobody could die. They could appear to do horrible things to each other, but they would be able to get up and walk it off after the battle. So Muscles didn't have to hold back. And once he started actually landing shots, it was over pretty quickly. So Mr. Muscles can no longer be Mr. Muscles. So we'll see what happens there at some point in the very near future. But most of the group is armored up. The only one who really isn't going to be is Muscles, but quite honestly, Muscles is fine. Building a suit of power armor for him is kind of almost redundant. Yeah, all in all, good night. So, thank you for joining me, everybody. I'm Rob. This has been my State of the Dungeon address. Until next time, roll some dice, game on. Thank you, and farewell.